Is it safe to travel during the pandemic? That is the question. And in this video, we will be discussing a couple of points that you have to take into account when making your final decision. So watch this video until the end if you want to know exactly what are the points that you should take into account before you decide if it's the right thing or not for you to do. Now, I'm not exactly fond of this topic, but as travelers, I believe that we should stay updated and we should be aware of what is going on around the world in terms of the travel industry. And this has become a major question going through, especially right now, through a very busy travel season. People are starting to ask themselves, how safe is it, or is it safe at all to travel during these times? And it seems like they're trying to evaluate the circumstances to try to assess whether really it is a good idea to travel or not. Now, a little disclaimer right here. This video is simply for informational purposes. I am by no means telling you what you should do or what you should not do. This is no medical advice, no advice at all, okay? Now, I'm aware that you probably just as me is just as hell tired of being at home and we just want to go out, we want to socialize, of course we want to continue with our lives, but sometimes it may feel like there is a very thin line between being responsible and doing what you have to do and actually doing what you want to do. And for that we ask ourselves that question, is it safe to travel or not? But is it really possible to define clearly whether it is safe or not to travel? Let's just look right into it. If you look at circumstances around the world objectively, there's been cases where people have had certain issues, and there's been certain cases where people had no issues at all. I know about a lot of cases of people that have been traveling and they had absolutely no problems and they didn't get the vid or whatever. And I've also known about cases that have been traveling and because of that experience and that exposure that they had, they ran into certain health problems. Now, looking at both sides of the coin, most objectively, the worst case scenario, starting with that, would be there are certain levels of uncertainty when it comes to what can happen. Now, your family can get involved as well if you are close to them. You might as well end up hospitalized in a different country and you have to make sure that you have the right insurance, and it all implicates very different types of factors. We have to be aware that every country runs their things in their own way, and so maybe the health aspect wouldn't be the same in your country that in their country. We're talking about money here, we're talking about procedures, we're talking about certain important decisions, maybe life decisions that you have to take, and you're not aware. If you are in a different country, you wouldn't know exactly what to expect. Of course, there are certain cases of people who've got the vid at the airport or maybe in flight while they are flying. But let's just jump right into the worst case scenario. Really, worst case scenario, you might die, right? But I don't want to sound that drastic, even though that is a reality, because we don't know what will happen or how things can happen. That is just simply the worst case scenario. Let's just stick to that for a second. Now, the best case scenario, what could happen? We've also heard about certain people who've been through airports, who've been through certain flights and had no problems at all. So we could also say that while there is a risk to it, you can also travel 100% safely and reach to a country and come back home without zero problems. But I would say everything that we're looking at right now really depends on two factors. The first factor would be the circumstances, things that we cannot control. The second factor would be yourself and things that you can control. Now, when it comes to the factors that you cannot control, the risk levels are quite relative and subjective because not everyone is taking the same measures. Not every country is taking the same measures. So, for example, some airlines have specific protocols that they've adapted to their in-flight boarding processes to make sure that everything is sanitized, that the actual plane is clean. And some airlines might not be doing the exact same thing in the best way possible. So it can depend on which airline you're taking, just starting from that point. Also, some people sometimes refuse to wear masks and you cannot control that. These are all the external factors. If someone doesn't want to wear a mask and maybe he has the vid, then you are automatically exposed to that certain type of risk. Another thing would be that some of the airlines don't have fully prepackaged food as well. Maybe they just give you an open something that is not safe, so to say. And in many ways, when we are talking about these factors, it is like rolling the dice. We certainly do not know what comes into play days, we don't know what's going to happen, and they are beyond our control. Now, when it comes to you and the things that you can't control, you have to ask yourself, what precautions are you taking? What actions are you taking? What type of behavior are you deciding to use and to take while you are at the airport and in your flight? Are you keeping distance between people? Are you wearing face masks? Are you washing your hands often? Are you conscious about all the risks around you? Are you touching things around you too much? And also, are you vaccinated? I'm not going to touch that topic of whether you can catch the Rona or not with or without the vaccine. Anyway, these are some of the things that you can control and some of the things that maybe you can make sure that help you prevent catching any type of disease. And this is probably the best and most objective way to think about safety today. Certain things you can't control, certain things you can control. When you're able to evaluate these two and make sure that what you can control can maybe overcome certain things that you can't control, maybe that is when you can objectively say that it is a safe environment and a safe decision to do what you're about to do. Again, I mean, I am no doctor and I am by no means telling you, whether it is safe or whether it is not safe. It really depends on how you see it, I believe. But what I do think is that when you are traveling, when you're at the airport, you are in those facilities, you're in flight, you're on board, all these things may be elevating to a certain degree the amount of exposure that you have, in which we could maybe logically say that the risk is higher. I mean, at least compared to, the protocol of staying at home. Even though people maybe even catch the Rona while staying at home, I mean, come on, it is just logic. But in the end of the day, I think it all comes down to asking yourself, are you willing to take the precautions? Are you willing to try to take control of what you can't control? Are you willing to wear a face mask? Are you willing to wash your hands? Are you willing to do these things that you have to do in the best case scenario? And in the worst case scenario, are you actually willing to cope or willing to stand by the consequences if something really happens? Are you willing to feel guilty or responsible if someone in your family has certain things because of you? It's just about evaluating that circumstance depending on what you are willing to do. Is it worth it? Would you risk it? Do you really want to do it? Can you maybe wait? I mean, either way, you're going to take a decision. And so might as well take the best decision that's right for you. I'm not here to tell you whether you should travel or whether you shouldn't travel. But I believe that when you make a decision, it may also impact not only your relative ones, but other people as well. We don't have to stop living our lives just for the sake of other people, but we can still be responsible and take care of others as a whole without quitting on what we want to do. Now, while there are many divided opinions about whether you should travel or not, that is in the end totally up to you. And you can use these things that we're talking about in this video to evaluate it. However, since it is such a divided opinion, in the next video, I'm going to be talking about travel shaming and how to deal with it in today's world. So make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon somewhere here so you get notified when that next video is out. Ciao.